So when I got the call to do this TEDx talk, I was beside myself. I couldn't believe an island girl such as myself could be chosen for such a task to represent not only my community, but my people. And so when I'm talking about Pacific people, I'm talking about people from Hawaii to Easter Island, New Zealand, Fiji, Samoa, Niue, Cook Islands, Tahiti, everywhere across the South Pacific. I represent those people. So everything that I had to come to terms with trying to understand what it is I wanted to write about for this piece, I had to really understand who I was with my culture. So I am a Tongan American. I come from the islands of Tonga. The Kingdom of Tonga is an island nation representative of 176 islands. It's also the last remaining island nation with a monarchy. So of all the South Pacific islands, we are the only island nation that still has a king and queen. With this knowledge, I was able to sit down and really think for myself what it is that truly represented me being Tongan. In my community, they ask me, "What is your name?" They say, "Koe ha hohingoa." And when they're asking this, they're asking not so much of my name, my first name. They understand that. They're asking for my family's name. So when they're asking for my family's name, they're also asking, where did you come from? And the minute they find out who you are and where you come from, they tell you a story. Now that story, it amazes me. I'll be in Juneau, I'll be in Barrow, and the minute I come across another Tongan American, they'll just tell me right off the bat, "Who are you?" And then I tell them, and I know what they're asking. As soon as I give them my last name, they immediately know who my parents are, who my grandparents are, and it amazes me every day to see that kind of storytelling happening wherever I am, whenever I cross another Tongan. So there's power in that, especially for me. I come from a line of ancient navigators. The method of wayfinding is what we used to travel across the South Pacific seas to lead us to each island, telling our stories throughout the South Pacific using song and dance as our history. So most of our history was never written. It was all oral. Everything was sung, everything was performed. When I look at this picture, I think to myself, I could never imagine having to follow a series of stars or understand the currents of the waves to find home. And for us, home was everywhere. Home was in the seas, it was in the ocean. And to me, there was power in that and understanding that kind of history for me. I am a descendant of a long line of chiefs, warriors, kings, and queens. I have done the genealogy work. I've seen the photos tracing back to thousands and thousands of years, and it truly influences me to give me inspiration and empowerment to know that bit of history. When I say that I'm a descendant of storytelling people, I'm also a descendant of dancers, of singers, people who perform with such grace and such poise that when we perform, it's with a task, and that task is representing who you are. So when most people see this dance, it's called a ta'olunga, and this ta'olunga represents the Tongan females in performing that ancient tradition of dancing. This often tells also the story of who we are, our line of kings and queens. And most of the time you'll see and hear people in the background sitting, and there'll be hundreds of them, a whole village, supporting these girls singing and telling our story. This is a picture of my family. This is actually a picture of my great-grandmother in the corner and her mother, my great-great-grandmother. This picture was taken in the late 1800s, and when I looked at it, I couldn't think for myself what this represented to me. What did I have to take from this story? And so it kind of got to me that I had to understand now fully that being Tongan also meant understanding your lineage, the faces, actually seeing for yourself what you come from. When I was in college, I really truly wanted to understand my history. And so nobody in the public school systems could tell me my history. I had to actually learn that myself. So I went to UAA's library and I checked out all the books on Pacific Islander history. Everything from Hawaii to Tonga, New Zealand, everything. I wanted to know it all. So one of the stories that I actually found that actually inspired me and influenced me to start the Strength and Beauty Conference was this woman right here. This is Queen Salote Dubo III. She was our third monarchy to the throne. And she actually advocated for public education and for public health in Tonga at the time in the late 60s. Now, keep in mind, we're also going through change in Tonga, so it meant a lot for us to kind of see somebody who was pushing for change in a time where there were so many things happening in the world, the civil rights movement, and here she was saying, you know what, but I need you to understand who you are as an indigenous person, but also the modern and Western side of who you're gonna be. She says in this quote, "One feels the heaviness of burdens, but I don't really mind the burden. What I care about is to do things the right way, so that when the time comes for someone else to carry on the work, there are no problems of mine for them, only those of their own making." I'm from a long line of descendants of divers. So this is my grandfather pictured here in the National Geographic issue. In 1968, he actually dived down 60 feet deep while there was an island emerging from the waters. He dived down to claim the island, which is also known as Falcon Island, for Tonga. And when I read this when I was a kid, I was amazed. I've never met my grandfather. And to find this story in National Geographic in 1968 was meaningful for me. So to find power in that and knowing that I come from a long line of divers just meant the world. So this actually is a more personal story. It actually comes from a story of being raised by my grandmother. The power in knowing tapa making. So this is actually the art of tapa. Tapa cloth is made out of mulberry bark. So this is actually made from a tree. And you get strips from the tree and actually beat it until it's flat and smooth. And women would wake up at 5 a.m. to perform this task. And this mat would actually stretch as long as 500 feet. So it would start out with one woman making that mat, but it would then include the whole village of women performing this task. In a quote, it says, "In 5 o'clock in the morning, she would prepare breakfast at the same time beating her tutu. Sometimes she missed breakfast or her meals. I always felt sorry for her, but at the same time admired the courage and strength that she had. Sometimes she said to us, 'I do this for you.' There is nothing in my own culture that more clearly reflects God's work. Ngatu makers are totally committed to their task, sacrificing themselves in many ways. They are active and creative and sometimes very demanding of themselves. Their love for their family and their responsibilities to others made them fulfill their roles with faith, dedication, and hope." This is actually tapa art that was actually made by my grandmother. This whole thing, and it was cut off because it was too big, so. But knowing that my own grandmother, and I actually remember sitting with her in the sun, doing these designs with her. And at first, I never got the story of it. I was just like, "Grandma, why are we doing this? This is not important." Oh. I'm a kid, I don't know, and she's looking at me like, "You'll understand." And when I finally asked her before she passed away, I said, "Why did you make all these mats?" And she told us, "Because I never wanted you guys to go empty-handed. Should you ever get married and you go to a family, you have something to give them." And so I was just blown away that a gift such as this big could be so meaningful and yet so important, not just to me, but to other people that we would also gift it to. And last but not least, I am a daughter of the South Pacific Ocean. I represent everything there is in the ocean, from the fish to the sea to the islands that spread out in every direction in the ocean. That is my space, and that is my home. I know where I am from. So in 2010, I created the I Am Pacifica campaign. This campaign was created to create an awareness for Pacific Islander men and women so that they would understand their strength and their courage, their ability to create an image for themselves that they too can be positive, that they can be empowering. I was overwhelmed for the years and years of the statistics saying that you had too many people with high school dropout rates, too many people incarcerated, too many people this, and I was fed up. I was done. I didn't want to hear it anymore. I wanted to hear now that my people could actually be positive. They could be somebody. They could be more than just a dream. And so I created this in awareness so that the women in my community, the men, that they can understand that space of owning their identity and owning their power and potential. So featured here are works of different girls from across the community in Anchorage that I've approached, that I've asked, that I've talked to, that I've gotten to know their story, their pain, their ups and their downs, their achievements. And the thing that I'm most proud of for all these young men and women is that they actually represent who they are, and they know that. They're still dreaming, they're still seeking out what it is that they represent, but they most importantly know that they are from the Pacific, that they own a part of their heritage. Most of these young women are Samoan, Tongan, Hawaiian, Chamorro, and most of these people are actually family. And the impact of their story is something that I plan on telling in May during Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and also why it is that they came to Alaska. Most people ask me, of all places, you guys come from paradise, you guys come from like the most beautiful islands, you come here? I'm like, don't even ask me, I was born here. But you know, there's such a story to that, you know, I tell people, you know, I was born here, but I was raised also in Tonga. So I had a balance of both, understanding that balance of being an American, but also being Tongan. And my parents also wanted to make sure that we understood that. When they came here, they came in the late 80s. My dad was enrolled at Anchorage Community College at the time. And he was telling me, he's like, you know, I was balancing 3 jobs, I was taking care of you guys, and I came here because I wanted to go to school. And to me, I was just like, what? You wanted to come to school? And that dream of being able to go to school and attain a degree and be something, be someone, was important to him. But now we're running through a generation of change where school is no longer important. And the message of having to be Tongan or Samoan is not important either. So having to put this campaign together and really tell the story of these young people and also about how they came about is what's driven me to come and create this space. I was truly inspired, especially by this girl, Lila. And she's Hawaiian and Samoan. And she has such a beautiful story to tell, and she's also a makeup artist. And when I asked her why she left Molokai, why she left Hawaii, she said because she wanted to do better. She wanted to see what it is that she could do to be here, to achieve, you know, better. Back in the islands, there's much to do, but there isn't much as in regards to opportunities. And so when you're playing with that space and that context of what it is you can do to now create opportunities from here back there, things like this, creating campaigns, creating an awareness, creating businesses that can give back in that sense, it's important. These are also my friends. They carry what's called the tatau. And in the Samoan culture, the tatau is actually our storytelling method of where we come from. So a lot of the motifs that you see in the designs are all from nature, all from how the voyage began. And so you'll see these tataus throughout the South Pacific, from Hawaii to Fiji to Tonga to New Zealand. And these young boys, actually, Donald and Abe, they're really good friends of mine, and they're actually Samoan and Maori. So their father's from Aotearoa, and they carry that essence of being able to wear that tattoo that comes from New Zealand. On the right is Andy, and he carries the tatau of the Samoan pe'a. So in the Samoan culture, you'll see the tatau being from the belly button all the way to the kneecaps. And the traditional way of doing that is that you get what's called a long needle-like tapping device, and you basically tap your tattoo. Now, for the men, it takes up to 3 months. The women do this too. They also tap their thighs and their hands. The tattoo method in that is that it tells the story of 2 sisters and how they brought the tattoo from Fiji to Samoa. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm laughing because at the same time, the history that holds the tattoos, they carry somewhat of a knowledge, but they have yet to learn more. And that's the awesome part of knowing that they continue to strive every day of learning that part of their history. So the power of I Am. When I created it, I saw all these ads and I didn't understand, what? This is cool. I didn't understand or see any of this before I created mine. And so I saw the ads of I am African, I am Malala, I am the future, I am real. And these were ads of people just stating the obvious, stating that they knew who they were, they knew what they come from, and I was amazed. I was amazed at the fact that the power of media has the power to actually tell their story. So my story was actually saying, I want to be, I am Pacifica, I am everything that the ocean represents. And so I'm grateful for everything that I've learned, not only within my culture and my community, but what I'm yet to learn, what I'm moving forward for my community. So thank you so much.